A dark, unblinking phone screen at precisely 7 o'clock is the silent siren of a ruined life. Every Sunday for 8 straight years, my daughter video called us without fail. Rain or shine, sick or tired, her face always lit up that screen. So when 7 o'clock came and went in absolute blackness, my blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone and dialed her cell. For hollow rings, then voicemail. I dialed my son-in-law, Julian. He answered on the second ring, his breath heavy, his voice unnaturally smooth. He blurted out that Sarah had gone to an emergency medical conference in Atlanta and forgot to call. When I asked to speak to my 8-year-old granddaughter, Maya, he paused a fraction of a second too long and claimed she was asleep in the bath. Then he made his fatal mistake. He called me Dave. Not once, but twice. Dave was his private finance attorney, not his father-in-law of 10 years. My name is Thomas Miller. After 40 years of tracing broken fuel lines as a diesel mechanic, I know when a man is lying through his teeth. To understand how a father's worst nightmare unfolded on a quiet Georgia evening, we must look back at the subtle warning signs that led to this silent disaster. It was a crisp autumn Sunday in Carterville, Georgia. The golden hour light filtered through the kitchen window, casting long, warm shadows across the wooden floorboards. The air inside our home was thick with the sweet aroma of warm peach cobbler fresh out of the oven, mixing with the sharp, earthy scent of fallen pine needles from the yard. In the living room, the steady hum of a country music station played on the old radio, filling the gaps between my wife Martha's quiet footsteps. Martha was 62, soft-spoken, her apron dusted with white flour. Every weekend, she baked cobblers to sell at the local farmer's market. I sat in my worn leather recliner, my 65-year-old joints aching from decades of crawling under rusted truck chassis. My hands were rough, calloused, permanently stained with grease. But looking around our modest home, I felt deep gratitude for our 43 years together. Our daughter, Sarah, was 32, a dedicated home health nurse. She spent her days driving between rural houses, caring for elderly patients with gentle patience. Since our granddaughter Maya was born 8 years ago, Sarah kept a sacred ritual. Every Sunday at 7 p.m. sharp, she would prop her phone on her kitchen counter and call us. Maya would jump into the frame, her dark eyes shining, babbling about her spelling tests or her drawings. It was the anchor of our week. On this Sunday, everything began normally. Martha had pot roast simmering, filling the hallway with the savory scents of garlic and rosemary. I watched the baseball game, muttering at the TV, while Martha checked the oven. When the clock struck 7, I muted the volume and set my phone on the coffee table. Martha pulled up a chair. We waited. 7 p.m. passed. The screen remained pitch black. 7:05 p.m. Silent. Martha smoothed her apron. Maybe traffic was bad on her way back from a patient, she whispered. By 7:15 p.m., the silence felt suffocating. I dialed Sarah. 4 long rings, then her voicemail sang out. Hi, you've reached Sarah. Leave a message. Hey, sweetheart, it's Dad. Give us a call when you get a chance, I said, keeping my tone light. At 7:30 p.m., I tried again. Straight to voicemail. Her phone was off. At 7:45 p.m., I called Julian. He was 35, an insurance broker with slick-back hair and a polished smile that never reached his eyes. He picked up immediately. Paul, Julian rushed out. I'm glad you called back so fast. The paperwork. It's Thomas, Julian, Sarah's dad. A heavy silence fell over the line. I heard his shallow breathing. Right. Sorry, Thomas. He glided smoothly. Sarah went to an emergency conference in Atlanta. She forgot the time. You know how she gets. Which conference, Julian? She works at home care, not as a hospital admin. I don't have the details offhand. I'll have her call you later. Let me speak to Maya, I demanded. She's in the bath, winding down. We're fine, Thomas. Don't stress. Julian, wait. I'll have her call you, Paul. The line went dead. I sat frozen. Julian had called me Paul twice, the name of his financial attorney. A man doesn't mistake his father-in-law for his lawyer unless he is scrambling to manage a collapsing lie. Martha's hands trembled over her cold food. Sarah tells us everything, Thomas. She would never leave for Atlanta without telling us. Never. I looked at the framed photo of 8-year-old Sarah sitting on the hood of my service truck wearing my oversized yellow hard hat. She had become a nurse because she wanted to fix broken people the way I fixed engines. But over the past 2 years, I had sensed a rigid, exhausting tension under her smile. 3 months ago, I had spotted a yellowish bruise on her wrist, 4 fingers, and a thumb. She had pulled her sleeve down fast, laughing it off. I had stayed silent to respect her privacy. Now, at 2 a.m., that silence crushed my chest. My cowardice had left my daughter unprotected. At 6 a.m., gray light seeped through the trees. Martha handed me a travel mug of hot coffee, her eyes red from silent tears. Pine Ridge Elementary opens at 7:30 a.m., I said. If the school confirms Sarah filed an official leave request, I'll come back home and wait. Martha gripped my sleeve. And if they say she didn't? I reached into my pocket, my fingers closing around a single silver deadbolt key Sarah had given me 2 years ago for emergencies. I looked my wife in the eye. Then I am getting in the truck, I said. And I am tracing this silence back to its source. The heavy diesel engine of my F-250 roared to life, vibrating through the cold steering wheel. The clock read 7:15 a.m. as I pulled out. A quick call to Pine Ridge Elementary confirmed my worst fear. Sarah had submitted no leave request. Her 4th grade class had been covered by a substitute since Thursday, and the school couldn't reach her. My stomach twisted into a knot. I pressed the gas pedal down, racing 40 minutes south toward Marietta. By 8:10 a.m., I turned onto Birchwood Lane. House number 224 sat cold and dark. Yellowed newspapers from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday lay soaked with dew on the walkway. The chrysanthemums Sarah planted in the window boxes were wilted and drooping. Her blue Honda Civic sat parked in the driveway, covered in fallen leaves. Julian's black SUV was gone. I walked up the steps and knocked firmly 3 times. The sharp sound echoed through the quiet street, but no one answered. I walked around to the side, cupping my hands against the garage window. Her car was right there. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 to request an urgent wellness check, explaining that my daughter had been missing from work for 5 days while her car sat at home. The dispatcher's voice came back crisp, informing me all patrol units were tied up at a multi-vehicle accident on Highway 75. The nearest officer would take 30 to 45 minutes to arrive. I couldn't wait 30 minutes. I walked to the back patio, scanning every detail. That was when I noticed the outdoor water meter was low in the foundation. The small red dial was spinning, slowly, steadily, but undeniably turning. Water was flowing inside that silent house. Refrigerators do not pull continuous water, and the house was supposed to be empty. Someone was using water. I stepped onto the porch, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pressed my ear flat against the cold glass of the basement window. I held my breath, filtering out the distant hum of traffic. From deep inside the foundation, a faint, metallic sound vibrated through the glass, a slow, rhythmic tapping rising through the concrete floor. My pulse surged. I pulled out my brass key ring and slid Sarah's silver deadbolt key into the lock. It turned with a smooth, heavy click. I pushed the door open. The air inside was stale, thick with the sour scent of uncollected trash and cold takeout food. I walked straight to the utility door behind the kitchen pantry, leading down to the basement. A heavy, brand-new steel master lock shackle held the latch shut. The metal glinted bright under the light. I raised my fist and knocked 3 slow times against the wood frame. 1, 2, 3. I held my breath. 5 agonizing seconds of total silence stretched out. Then, from the dark space behind the door, came 3 weak, muffled knocks. 1, 2, 3. It was our signal. My hands shook as I reached into my leather tool bag, gripping my 18-inch bolt cutters. I set my feet shoulder-width apart, positioned the hardened steel jaws around the shackle, and squeezed with every ounce of strength left in my shoulders. The steel groomed, snapped with a loud crack, and the severed lock clattered onto the linoleum floor. I yanked the door open. A wave of damp, cool air rushed up, carrying the sharp smell of a portable chemical toilet. I flipped the light switch. A single bare bulb flickered on, casting pale, yellow light down the wooden steps. "Sarah," my voice cracked. "Sarah, I'm here." "Dad." Her voice drifted up, thin, raspy, and papery, like dry leaves dragging across concrete. "Dad, please hurry." I took the stairs 2 at a time, my work boots thudding heavily against the wood. At the bottom, sitting on the cold concrete floor in a pale blue circle of light from a dying camping lantern, was my daughter. Sarah's brown hair was matted. Her face was gray with exhaustion. A dark, healing scrape ran along her cheekbone. Her wrists were ringed with raw, angry red marks where plastic zip ties had bitten into her skin. I dropped to my knees on the hard concrete, ignoring the sharp spike of pain in my joints, and pulled her into my arms. Sarah came apart completely against my flannel shirt. Her body shook with convulsive, jagged sobs as her fingers dug desperately into my shoulders. "I've got you, sweetheart," I whispered into her hair, holding her tight against my chest. "I've got you. You're safe now." "I heard you walking upstairs," she choked out between ragged breaths, tears soaking my collar. "I heard the front door. I was so scared it was him coming back." "It's just me," I said, pulling back to look into her hollow eyes. "Nobody else is ever going to hurt you again." She winced as she rubbed her sore wrists, her voice trembling. "He locked me down here, Wednesday night. He brought a woman home. He told me I had to sign transfer papers for the house. When I refused, he locked the door." I gripped her hands firmly, my blood boiling with silent rage. But before I could speak, Sarah's eyes widened with sudden, terrifying panic. Her fingers dug into my forearm with frantic strength. "Dad." "Maya." Her voice rose into an urgent, desperate scream. "Julian told me he sent her to his mother's house in Savannah, but I don't know if he lied. Is she upstairs? Dad, where's my baby?" I took the basement stairs 2 at a time, my heart hammering as Sarah's desperate cry echoed behind me. I pushed through the kitchen and raced up the steps to the 2nd floor. The upstairs hallway was dim, quiet, and cold. All the bedroom doors stood shut. I rushed straight to the 2nd door on the right, Maya's room. I pushed the door open. Pale morning light filtered through thin white curtains, illuminating a space that was strangely, unnaturally neat. Stuffed animals were lined up in precise order on the unmade bed. Her library books were stacked neatly on the nightstand, a blue ribbon bookmark sticking out of the top one. On the dresser sat a half-finished friendship bracelet, its colorful threads still taped down to a plastic pin. My chest tightened. An 8-year-old child does not abandon a half-finished craft project or leave her favorite books behind when going on a planned trip. Julian had lied. Maya had never been sent to Savannah. "Maya." I kept my voice low and steady, filtering out the panic in my throat. Maya, sweetheart, it's Grandpa Thomas. It's okay now. You can come out. Silence filled the room. Nothing moved. I thought about Sarah's words downstairs, and I remembered how children act when terrified. They do not run into the open. They shrink into the smallest, darkest corner they can find. I thought about the spinning water meter downstairs. I thought about the subtle signs of life in a house supposed to be empty. I dropped to my hands and knees beside the bed and lifted the pink bed skirt. The space beneath the bed frame was dark, dusty, and cramped. For one terrifying second, I saw only clutter, a scattered box of colored pencils, a deflated soccer ball, and a rolled-up sleeping bag. Then, in the far back corner, jammed tightly between the wall and a plastic storage bin, two wide, dark eyes blinked back at me. Maya, my voice broke. Oh, baby girl. A small, choked noise came from the darkness, the sound of a child trying desperately not to cry out loud. Then the dust shifted. Maya scrambled forward on her hands and knees, kicking aside the pencil box. I reached under, grabbed her small arms, and pulled her out into the light. She slammed against my chest so hard I rocked back onto my heels. She weighed almost nothing, her thin frame trembling violently against my flannel shirt. Her small arms wrapped around my neck in a frantic grip, her face buried deep into my collar. She smelled like faint peanut butter, stale dust, and cold sweat. I waited, Grandpa, she sobbed, her words broken and muffled against my shoulder. Mom said you'd come if something bad happened. I counted the hours. I waited under the bed. I've got you, Maya, I whispered, tears burning my eyes as I rocked her back and forth. Grandpa's got you. You're safe. Your mom is downstairs. Maya pulled back slightly, her small face streaked with tears and dirt, her lips dry and cracked. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out an old iPad encased in a cracked purple rubber cover. She thrust it into my hands with fierce determination. I recorded it, Grandpa, she whispered, her raw voice shaking. I hid under the bed on Wednesday night when Dad started shouting. I turned on the voice recorder app and pushed the iPad under the pillow. I recorded everything, so you would know what happened. I looked at the screen. A single 45-minute audio file sat saved on the recorder app, time-stamped from Wednesday evening. I cupped her tear-stained face in my hands. Maya, did you stay under this bed the whole time? How did you eat? Maya swallowed hard, wiping her nose with her sleeve. She explained that she had 4 granola bars in her nightstand drawer. She ate one each day, cutting the last one in half when she realized time was running out. Every night when the house went dark and quiet, she would crawl out to the bathroom in the dark, drink straight from the faucet to keep the water noise quiet, and fill her small water bottle before crawling back under the bed. She also revealed something else. On Thursday night, while Julian was out, the woman he brought home, Chloe, had walked upstairs alone. Chloe had quietly opened the bedroom door, left a small plastic bag containing 2 juice boxes and a turkey sandwich on the floor, and whispered softly into the dark room before leaving. Chloe's guilty conscience had kept Maya alive. You are the bravest girl in the world, I choked out, tucking the iPad under my arm and scooping Maya up into my arms. I carried her down the stairs. As we reached the main floor, the front door burst open. 2 Cobb County police officers and paramedics entered the foyer, their heavy boots thudding against the hardwood floor. At that exact moment, the phone in my jacket pocket vibrated loudly. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was Julian. I hit the speaker button. Julian. Thomas. Julian's voice came through sharp, cold, and aggressive, all his previous smoothness completely gone. What the hell are you doing at my house? You have no right to be inside my property. Where is Sarah? I'm standing in your hallway with the police, Julian, I said, my voice dropping into a hard, unyielding tone. I found Sarah in the basement. I found Maya under her bed. And I have Maya's iPad with 45 minutes of audio recording from Wednesday night. Dead air filled the line. 3 full seconds of absolute silence. I'm calling my lawyer, Julian whispered, his voice suddenly flat, hollow, and drained of all confidence. Run, Julian, I said softly into the receiver, because the police are already on their way. I hung up the phone, set it in my pocket, and held my granddaughter tight as the paramedics moved in to help. Inside Emergency Bay 4 of Wellstar Kentstone Hospital, the sharp, cold scent of antiseptic and rubbing alcohol filled the air. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a bright white glare across the polished linoleum floor. Soft saline drips clicked rhythmically, feeding warm fluids into the pale veins of Sarah's left arm. In the adjacent bed, Maya lay wrapped in a heated cotton blanket, a cheerful pediatric nurse fitting a small blood pressure cuff around her thin arm. Color was slowly returning to Maya's cheeks as she clutched a plush brown teddy bear to her chest. Martha sat in a plastic chair between the 2 hospital beds. Her rough, flour-dusted hands clasped Sarah's cold fingers, stroking her knuckles in steady, comforting circles. For 40 minutes, the room remained a sanctuary of quiet breathing and gentle monitoring. The peaceful silence shattered when the heavy glass doors slid open. A tall woman in a sharp gray blazer walked into the bay, a black leather clipboard tucked under her arm. She wore polished black heels that clicked loudly against the floor. She introduced herself as Ms. Brenda Vance, no relation to the detective, an agent from Cobb County Child Protective Services. Given the severe nature of the domestic confinement and neglect, Ms. Vance stated, her voice flat, practiced, and detached, state protocol mandates placing Maya into temporary protective custody. She will be transferred to a licensed foster facility pending a full psychological evaluation. Sarah sat up abruptly in her hospital bed, the heart monitor beeping erratically as her pulse spiked. No, Sarah gasped, her raw voice cracking with sudden terror. No, you cannot take my daughter. Martha stood up from her chair immediately. Her soft, rounded posture vanished, replaced by an unyielding, rigid iron spine. She stepped directly between the social worker and Maya's bed. She reached into her large canvas handbag and pulled out a thick, worn leather binder. She slapped it onto the rolling tray table with a sharp, heavy thud. This binder contains Maya's complete medical history, Martha declared, her voice ringing through the emergency bay with absolute, fierce authority. Every vaccination, every dental checkup, every school report card, and every allergy note since the day she was born. My husband and I raised our daughter, and we helped raise this child. We built her world, and no bureaucrat with a clipboard is going to tear her away from the only family that loves her. The social worker blinked, taken aback by the sudden, immovable wall standing before her. At that exact moment, Detective Sam Vance pushed through the curtain. His heavy leather jacket smelled of cold rain and stale coffee. He looked at the social worker, then at Martha's fierce eyes. I am the lead investigator on this case, Detective Vance said, his deep voice cutting through the tension. Raymond and Martha Miller have provided flawless, documented care for this child. I am signing an emergency kinship care authorization right now. Maya remains in the legal custody of her grandparents. Case closed. The social worker hesitated, looked at the determination radiating from Martha, signed the form on her clipboard, and exited the bay without another word. Detective Vance then motioned to me. Thomas, step outside with me for a moment. I followed him out into the quiet, dimly lit hallway. The cold tile floor felt solid beneath my worn work boots. Vance pulled out his department smartphone, tapping the screen to reveal a glowing digital map of Georgia. A red alert icon flashed near the top of the display. Our financial tracking team just flagged a transaction, Vance explained, pointing a thick finger at the flashing red dot. Julian Miller just swiped his Visa debit card at a Pilot gas station off Highway 411, 50 miles north of Atlanta. He bought $40 of diesel and a pack of cigarettes 10 minutes ago. Our Northern Patrol units are converging on Route 411 right now. I stared at the glowing map. I closed my eyes, visualizing Julian's sleek, polished face, his expensive shoes, and his obsession with appearances. My mechanic's brain began running through the mechanical logic of a man under pressure, analyzing the friction, the direction, and the heat. "It's a fake alibi," I said, opening my eyes. My voice was a low, hard growl. Vance frowned, looking at me sharply. "What do you mean?" "Julian is an arrogant, city-bred coward," I explained, leaning closer. "He hates back roads, he hates rural highways, and he knows card swipes ping cell towers instantly. He didn't drive north. He handed that Visa card to a hitchhiker or paid a gas station clerk $50 cash to swipe it for him while he headed the opposite direction. Where is he really going, Thomas?" Vance asked, his eyes narrowing as he absorbed my words. "South," I answered without a second of hesitation. 3 weeks ago, Sarah caught him withdrawing $40,000 in cash from their joint savings account. He isn't running toward the mountains. He's driving south on Interstate 95 toward Brunswickport. He's going to buy unregistered cash passage on a private charter boat heading to the Bahamas. Detective Vance stared at me for 3 long seconds. He didn't question my logic. He pulled out his radio, pressed the side button, and spoke in a rapid, authoritative clip. "Dispatch, this is Vance. Cancel the northern intercept on Highway 411. Issue an immediate all-points bulletin to Glynn County Port Authority and Georgia State Patrol South. Target vehicle is a black Chevy Tahoe heading south on I-95 toward Brunswick docks. Suspect is armed, dangerous, and attempting maritime flight." 2 hours and 45 minutes later, the high-stakes trap snapped shut. State troopers and federal port officers spotted Julian's black Tahoe cruising slowly toward the private marina docks in Brunswick, Georgia, just 12 miles from the open ocean. 4 marked patrol cruisers surrounded the SUV, their red and blue lights flashing against the dark coastal waters. Officers drew their sidearms, shouting commands through bullhorns into the damp night air. Julian surrendered without a fight, throwing his hands out the driver's window, his polished composure completely shattered. Beside him in the passenger seat, Chloe Weston broke down into hysterical, uncontrollable sobs. By 11:30 p.m., Chloe was sitting in an interrogation room at the Cobb County Precinct, faced with federal felony charges of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and obstruction of justice. Her resolve dissolved in minutes. She waived her right to an attorney and confessed to everything on tape. She detailed how Julian had forged Sarah's signature on the house deed, transferred the funds into his Delaware shell company, and planned the entire confinement. But her most terrifying admission came when the prosecutor asked about the basement. Julian said it was temporary. Chloe wept, her face buried in her shaking hands, her voice recorded clearly on the microphone. He said Sarah just needed a few days in the dark to break her spirit, so she'd sign the final escrow papers. But on Saturday night, when she still refused, Julian told me we were going to move her to a climate-controlled storage unit outside Kennesaw on Wednesday night. He told me dead women don't fight for custody in court. He was going to leave her there. At midnight, Detective Vance walked back into Sarah's hospital room. The room was quiet, lit only by the soft green glow of the heart monitor. Martha was asleep in the chair, holding Maya's small hand. Sarah was wide awake, sitting up in bed, waiting. Vance stood at the foot of her bed. He looked at Sarah, his face grave and solemn, then offered a small, respectful nod. Julian Miller and Chloe Weston are in federal custody, Vance announced quietly. The district attorney is filing charges tomorrow morning: aggravated kidnapping, first-degree child endangerment, grand financial forgery, and attempted premeditated murder. No bail. Sarah closed her eyes. She drew in a deep, shaking breath, filling her lungs with clean air, exhaling 10 years of silent fear, hidden bruises, and suffocating control. When she opened her eyes, the hollow, terrified look was completely gone. In its place was something bright, hard, and unbroken. She looked down at the raw red marks on her wrists, then reached out and took my rough, grease-stained hand. She knew then that the dark basement was behind her. No man would ever chain her life again. 2 weeks after leaving Wellstar Kentstone Hospital, Sarah stood before the bathroom mirror at our Carterville house. Pale morning sunlight streamed through the frosted window pane, illuminating the faint, fading yellow rings around her wrists. She did not look away. She did not cry. For 2 long years, she had trapped herself in a cycle of self-blame, convincing herself that if she worked longer shifts, kept a cleaner kitchen, or spoke more softly, she could fix Julian's coldness. But standing inside her childhood home, surrounded by the familiar scent of cedar and baking flour, a profound mindset shift took root deep within her soul. Sarah stopped playing the victim. She stopped asking why this had happened to her. She accepted a hard, liberating truth. She could not control Julian's cruelty, but she was 100% responsible for her own happiness, her own choices, and her daughter's future. The transformation was not just emotional. It manifested through concrete, relentless action. Sarah began by dismantling the financial and legal webs Julian had spun around her life. She hired an aggressive female divorce attorney and a certified forensic accountant in downtown Marietta. Together, they spent 5 painstaking days auditing every bank statement, credit line, and tax filing from the past 3 years. They traced the exact path of the $43,200 Julian had secretly siphoned into his Delaware shell company, Apex Assets, LLC. The forensic examiner produced an expert report proving the signature on the house deed was a forged duplicate traced from an old check. Armed with this evidence, Sarah's attorney appeared before a Cobb County judge. The judge issued an immediate emergency decree. The fraudulent house transfer was annulled, Julian's remaining bank accounts were frozen, and his parental rights were permanently terminated. Sarah reclaimed her half of the property equity, depositing every dollar directly into a high-yield trust fund for Maya's college education. Next, Sarah turned her fierce focus toward upgrading her own mind, body, and professional standing. She applied for and gained admission into the Advanced Master of Science Nurse Practitioner program at Kennesaw State University. Every morning at 6 a.m., before the sun crested the dark Georgia pine trees, Sarah laced up her new running shoes. She ran 3 miles along the gravel county roads alongside me. The crisp, biting autumn air filled her lungs. The rhythmic thud of her sneakers against the dirt grounded her thoughts. Her legs grew leaner and stronger with every passing week. She took control of her physical presentation as well. She cut her long, unkempt brown hair into a sharp, modern shoulder-length bob that framed her face with clean precision. She threw away her old, oversized cardigans and faded scrubs, replacing them with crisp navy uniforms and tailored gray blazers. When she walked into the medical clinic where she worked, her posture was erect, her chin held high, and her shoulders squared. She spoke to doctors, patients, and administrators with a clear, calm, and commanding voice. Her work ethic and sharp clinical judgment did not go unnoticed. By late winter, the regional medical director promoted Sarah to lead home health coordinator, placing her in charge of managing 12 field nurses across 3 counties. At home, Sarah actively rebuilt Maya's world through shared physical labor and emotional healing. On a bright Saturday morning in November, Sarah, Maya, and I set out to transform the spare upstairs bedroom into Maya's new personal sanctuary. The room smelled of fresh lavender paint, crisp pine lumber, and citrus cleaner. Maya chose the wall color herself, a bright, vibrant shade of sky blue that she proudly called Swimmer's Sky. Sarah handed Maya a small wooden trim brush, showing her how to apply smooth, even strokes along the white baseboards. Maya got blue paint on her nose, her elbows, and her denim overalls, laughing freely and loudly for the first time in months. The sound of her laughter echoed through the wooden hallway, warming every cold corner of the house. In addition to physical projects, Sarah and Maya attended weekly mother-daughter trauma recovery therapy sessions in Atlanta. They learned to identify emotional triggers, process buried anger, and establish unshakable personal boundaries. By mid-January, cold winter rain had washed away the dry autumn leaves, leaving the Georgia pines standing tall and dark against the sky. Sarah stood at the end of the long, brightly lit main corridor of the Cobb County Health Center. Her new silver name badge glinted under the overhead LED lights. Sarah Miller, RN, BSN, Lead Care Coordinator. She held a sleek black leather clipboard containing her team's weekly patient schedules. A younger staff nurse walked past, pausing to ask Sarah for advice on a complex patient case. Sarah listened attentively, answered with crisp authority, and offered a warm word of encouragement. As the nurse walked away, Sarah looked at her reflection in the tall glass window overlooking the courtyard. She no longer saw the exhausted, invisible woman who used to lock herself in the bathroom to weep silently into a towel. She no longer saw a victim waiting for someone to rescue her. She saw a strong, self-reliant, and fiercely capable woman who had fought her way out of the dark and reclaimed her life piece by piece. She took a deep, steady breath, straightened the lapels of her blazer, and walked toward her new office with a firm, unshakable stride. Late spring brought a gentle, golden warmth to Carterville, Georgia. The late afternoon sun hung low in the western sky, painting the scattered clouds in brilliant, shimmering shades of amber, violet, and soft rose. It was the golden hour, that magical, quiet time when the harshness of the day dissolves into warm, golden light. A sweet, intoxicating fragrance filled the air around our front porch. The rich, buttery scent of Martha's fresh peach cobbler drifted out through the open kitchen window, mingling with the sharp, earthy smell of newly mown grass and sweet jasmine blooming along the white wooden fence. In the spacious backyard, 8-year-old Maya was running barefoot across the soft green lawn, her bright, uninhibited laughter ringing out clear and pure, like a silver bell. She was chasing a stray yellow butterfly alongside a small, energetic rescue puppy she had named Detective Barnaby. I sat in my old wooden rocking chair on the porch, feeling the smooth, sun-warmed grain beneath my calloused fingertips. My 65-year-old joints still ached on rainy mornings, but on this quiet Sunday evening, a deep, unshakable peace rested inside my chest. The heavy, suffocating tension that had gripped my shoulders for 2 long years was completely gone. At precisely 7 p.m., the soft, familiar chime of my cell phone broke the peaceful rhythm of the evening. I picked up the phone from the small wooden side table. The screen lit up with Sarah's name, but she was not calling from miles away in Marietta. I looked up toward the edge of the lawn. Sarah was standing right there in the warm, golden sunlight, just 15 feet away from my chair. She wore a light white linen sundress and held her smartphone in her hand, her face illuminated by a gentle, radiant smile. She pressed the green button on her screen and held the phone up to her ear. "Hey, Dad." Her voice came through the phone speaker, clear, warm, and brimming with vibrant life. I smiled, holding my phone to my ear as I looked straight into her bright brown eyes. "Hey, sweetheart," I replied softly, "just checking in." Maya heard her mother's voice, stopped her chase, and came sprinting up the wooden porch steps. She dissolved into giggles, throwing her arms around Sarah's waist. Martha walked out through the screen door, carrying a glass pitcher of iced tea and a tray of warm cobbler, her soft face shining with unbridled joy. The Sunday call had returned. It was no longer a frantic lifeline stretching across miles of dark highway, nor a desperate attempt to prove survival. It was a celebration. It was a sacred, joyful ritual anchored right here in our home, just a few feet away from where I sat. A week earlier, a formal letter had arrived from the Cobb County District Attorney's Office. Julian had sent a handwritten petition from his federal prison cell, begging Sarah to write a letter of leniency to the judge before his final sentencing hearing. Sarah had read the letter quietly at the kitchen table, her expression calm, unmoved, and completely unbothered. She did not rage. She did not cry. She felt no burning desire for revenge. She simply picked up a pen and wrote a single, brief sentence on a blank white card. "I do not hate you, Julian. Hatred would mean you still hold space in my mind, so I release you to your fate, and I claim my absolute freedom." She sealed the envelope, dropped it in the mailbox, and never spoke his name again. She had let go of the past completely, leaving no room in her heart for bitterness, anger, or resentment. I looked at my daughter as she sat beside me on the wooden porch swing, sipping her iced tea. The pale scars on her wrists were almost invisible now, softened by time, sunlight, and steady healing. She looked completely free, deeply peaceful, and fiercely proud of the life she had rebuilt with her own hands. I reached out and took her hand, feeling the quiet strength in her grip. Maya curled up on the woven rug at our feet, hugging her puppy, her dark eyes heavy with happy exhaustion. The sun slowly dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a brilliant sky of deep crimson and burnished gold. Looking at my family gathered together in the warm twilight, I knew the deepest truth of all. Real love is not about remaining helpless in the dark to keep the peace. It is about having the courage to show up, to fight through the storm, and to lead the people you love back into the light. When you choose to stop being a victim, when you take complete responsibility for your own life, the world opens up and hands you the quiet, unshakable crown of true freedom. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.